Okay. Good morning, everybody. Just wanted to before we go any further into any other historical responsa, I just wanted to clarify an issue because there seemed to be something that threw me at least for a loop yesterday. In that, when we looked at Rav Moshe Isserlis's responsum about the whole issue about whether a competing publisher could publish a work that's in the public domain, but by publishing that work, it would cause financial loss for the first person who had entered into that endeavor. The Ramah quotes a Gemara that seems to go against what the Rav Shulchan Aruch had told us is permissible to do, which is to open up a business. There is a free enterprise open market when it comes to serving the public, and you can open up a store right next door to another person. And yet the Ramah had quoted a Gemara, and it turns out it's on the very same page in Maseches Bava Basra, that says that if I live in an alleyway and I've set up a business, I can block a competing person who does the very same occupation from opening up next door to me. So how do we reconcile this? So I just wanted to show you the Gemara to show you that it's actually a machlokes. So the Gemara starts over here. Amar Rav Huna. Rav Huna said, Hai bar mavua da'oki rechaya, that if a member of an alleyway, which is what a mavui is, it's a small side street, if he sets up a mill to provide milling services for the members of that small little neighborhood, va'asa bar mavua chavre v'kamoki gabe, and another member of that same small neighborhood establishes a competing millery right next to him, dinahu dema'ake viluye, then halacha allows the first miller to stop the second miller. I guess he'll tell him it's miller time. Da'amarle kapaskas li lichiyuse, and he could tell him, well, it's because you are putting a stoppage on my parnasa. You're preventing me from making the living that I am used to making. So it seems from this Gemara that it's okay, that you can actually stop a person from setting up a competing business next door to you. So lema misayele. So first of all, the Gemara says perhaps the following is a support from a Mishnah, because the Mishnah says marchikim mitzudas hadag min hadag kimalo ritzas hadag, that if a fellow has already set up a net in the river to catch fish, he can compel any other competing fishermen to distance their nets a distance such that the fish that are in this vicinity will not get caught in that competing net. Vikama, and how far can he make them go? Amar Rabba bar Rav Huna ad parsa. Up to a parsa you can make the guy go. If you can prove that the fish that are coming into your net will be stopped by this guy's net, and he's going to be taking away your parnasa, you can tell him to go up, even a parsa away, like a kilometer away, because you've got to find your own place to catch fish. So you see from here that you can stop a competitor. So the Gemara says that's not necessarily proof, because shiny dogim diyahavi siyara, that fish are different in that they give forth their eye. Rashi explains, if you take a look at Rashi down here, shiny dogim diyahavi siyara, nosnin ayin bahabatan. They once they place their eye on something, they sort of latch onto that objective. Lihios nohagim larutz lamakom shiuru sham mizonos. If they detect that there's bait in a certain place, even from a very far distance, the fish will hone in on that bait and they will swim towards it. Hilchach keven shehikir zechuro v'nasan mizanos b'sochem lo ritzaso. And therefore, let's say there's a special spot where a fisherman who knows the malacha of catching fish recognizes that there's a certain spot where the fish have a hole underneath the water where they gather. And he puts bait right there. Batuachu sheyil chadenu dahavale kamandamata liyade. Then it's already as if by putting down the bait, it's as if he's already caught the fish. They're already in the bag. V'nimtza chaveru maziko. And then, therefore, his friend is causing him real damage by taking fish that have already latched onto his bait and pulling them away. But in the case of the millers, the first miller says, hey, you're stopping my parnasa, but the second miller can easily tell him, this is a public, I'm appealing to the public. I'm reaching out to the public domain. Whoever wants to come to patronize you will patronize you, and whoever wants to come to patronize me will patronize me. It's not like the customers were already in your bag, so to speak, and that you already have them. It's not like fish. These people have free will. They can go to you, they can go to me. So you can't prove from the case of a fisherman who has a right to stop a competitor that you can stop a competing miller. So then the Gemara goes on and it says, Amar le Ravina l'Rava, Lema Rav Huna da Amar Karabi Yehuda. Perhaps Rav Huna is holding like one particular Tana in contrast with the Chachamim. Why? Let me show you what the Mishnah says. Ditnan Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Lo yechalek chenvani klayos ve'egozim letinokos mipnei shemargilin etzlo v'chachamim atirin. That there's a machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim, whether it's permitted for one storekeeper to distribute candy to the children of the neighborhood in order to attract them to come and shop at his store. And Rabbi Yehuda says you're not supposed to do that because you're going to pull away customers from your competitors. But the Chachamim say that it's perfectly fine because, as the Gemara will explain, it's an open market. Everyone can do whatever advertising and whatever premiums they wish to offer in order to attract customers. And the Gemara says, "Afilu tema Rabbanan adkan lo pligi Rabbanan alei de Rabbi Yehuda Hasam ela de Amarle ana kemafalgina amguze at plok shiuski." He says, no, it could be that the Chachamim would agree that in this case, the first miller can prevent the second miller from opening up. And the reason is that even though they hold that when it comes to storekeepers, they are allowed to distribute candy, it could be that over there it's because they opened up at the same time. And one storekeeper can say to the other storekeeper, I'm distributing this kind of sweets. You distribute a different kind of sweets. In other words, you can do whatever I'm doing. And it's not like I swooped in from nowhere and took away your business. I'm just trying to lure customers to my store, but you can just as easily lure customers to your store. But perhaps in our case, where there was already one established miller for a long period of time, he had the monopoly on the market. Maybe the Chachamim would agree that he could stop the second miller from opening up because he's definitely going to cause a loss in income. So at this point, the Gemara is prepared to say that Rav Huna is correct, but there's one last twist. Meisvei Osa Adam Chanus Bitzad Chanus Shel Chavero, Umerchatz Bitzad Merchatzo Shel Chavero, Ve'enu Yachol Limchos Biyado. That the Brisa seems to contradict Rav Huna. And it says that a person can open up a store next to an already established store. He can open up a bathhouse, which you would build a bathhouse as a source of income, right? Because you would charge each customer who wants to come in to bathe. And you can open up a bathhouse next to an already existing bathhouse, and the first bathhouse cannot stop you. Because the competitor can always say to the first guy, listen, you're doing your work in your domain. I'm doing my work in my domain. It's a free country, and let the public decide who they would like to patronize. So that seems to contradict Rav Huna, who says that the second miller can be stopped. So Tanoihi. So the Gemara says, guess what? It's actually a machlokes Tanoim as to whether you can the first established person can stop the second person from coming in. The Tanya Kofin b'nei mavuo zeh shelo lahoshiv b'neim lo chayit v'lo borsaki v'lo melame tinokos v'lo echan mibnei baalei umnios. So he says, as the Brisa says, that members of different alleyways can stop each other, so that they can stop each other from setting up a tailor or a tanner or a teacher or any other kind of profession. But the only thing is that you cannot stop your neighbor. If this is a local neighbor, you can stop someone from another neighborhood from coming in, but you can't stop a local, someone who's from the same neighborhood, from setting up shop. And Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Omer, Af lishcheno kofehu. And Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says that you are allowed to stop your neighbor. So it's a machlokes between the Chachamim and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, whether or not you can stop a member of the same alleyway, of the same small neighborhood, whether or not you can do that. So Rav Huna paskins like Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, who says that you can stop him, but the Chachamim say that you can't stop him. So it's clearly a machlokes as to whether you can stop. And Amar Rav Huna berei de Rav Yehoshua, and Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yehoshua, just adds to that, and he says, Pshitali barmata abarmata achriti matzi ma'akev v'ishayach bekarga dahacha lo matzi ma'akev. He says that if a person's coming from a completely different city, then you can, everyone would agree that you can stop him unless he pays the local taxes. But bar mevua denafshe lo matzi ma'akev. But one member of the same small mavoi cannot stop a competitor from the same mavoi. So he clearly disagrees with Rav Huna. And he clearly disagrees with Rav Huna. So in the conclusion of this Gemara is that Rav Huna has decidedly taken the opinion of Rav Shimon ben Gamliel against the Chachamim, and Rav Huna berei de Rav Yehoshua takes a decidedly different opinion, and he goes like the Chachamim. So that's the reason why when we looked at the Shulchan Aruch, which says that you can open up a competing store, it's not a contradiction to Rav Huna's halacha, because opening up a competing store goes according to a different opinion. And so what's fascinating is that the Ramah chose within this Gemara to paskin like Rav Huna, and everyone else in the Shulchan Aruch paskins like Rav Huna berei de Rav Yehoshua, the latter opinion, which says that it's perfectly permitted. Now, you could ask yourself the question, if the Ramah is aware, he's one of the authors of the Shulchan Aruch, then why did he take the Maram Padua's side and say that it was not permitted for anyone else to publish books, if he clearly knew that the conclusion of the Gemara is that we do lean more towards an open market and allow competition? Well, that's not clear. It could have something to do with the fact that maybe the second publisher was a Gentile and the Maram Padua was a sage, like all of the other reasons that he provided. But I just wanted to show you that the basis for this ambiguity in the halacha is based on the fact that it turns out to be a machlokas. Now, if we take a look at the Aruch HaShulchan, who codifies this in Siman Kuf Nun Vav, he quotes the Gemara. I hope everyone can see it. He quotes the Gemara, Kofin b'nei mavuo zeh shelo lohoshiv b'nei lo chayit v'lo borsaki v'lo echad mi bali umnos he says that the members of different alleyways can prevent each other from opening up, allowing into their neighborhood a tailor, a tanner, or any other profession from opening up in their alleyway. But v'lishcheno eno kofeu, but you cannot prevent your neighbor. If someone actually lives in that neighborhood, you cannot stop him from opening up shop. Amar Rav Huna Berei de Rav Yehoshua Bar Masa Achriti Matzi Ma'akev V'Shayach Bekarga Dahacha Lo Matzi Ma'akev. That if a person is coming from out of town, a completely different city, so he's not paying local taxes, you can surely stop him from coming in. Ubar Mavua Denafsh Lo Matzi Ma'akev. If he lives in the same alleyway, you cannot stop him from opening up his putting up his shingle. But bar mavua achriti teku. But if he lives in the same town, but he's from a different alleyway, so then it's unclear, and the Gemara says we'll leave it as a teku, we'll leave it as something that's unresolved, and the Aruch HaShulchan just adds the kevin dahava safek lo matzi ma'akev, because it's unresolved. The conclusion in halacha is that you can't stop a competitor as long as he's paying local taxes. Even if he comes from a different neighborhood, you can't stop him from opening up shop. There are some rabbis who look at this Gemara a little bit differently, and they say that if there's no profession in that alleyway, it's a very quiet suburban neighborhood, right? And there's no commercial activity going on in that neighborhood. So then they can stop a person who wishes to engage in commercial activity in their neighborhood. Shelo yikanes umen b'neihem mipnei riboy hanichnasim v'hayotzim. And the argument being is that they say our alleyway is a quiet alleyway. It's like a cul-de-sac. We're not interested in having a person, today we have zoning laws, which will prevent a store from opening up in a rural neighborhood. But before there were zoning laws, some learned that this Gemara is making reference to the fact that if there is no commercial activity on a street, the members of that street can stop a person from putting up a shingle. And the reason is they can simply say, we don't want traffic coming into our street. We like the quiet. We don't want people coming in and out of our street and making noise. But ve'im kvar yesh beinehem uman ein yecholam la'akev od al misha balasos umnazu. But if there is already some commercial activity, like there is already a miller on the street, and people are coming with their grain, and they come to the miller, and he's grinding their grain into flour, so then they cannot stop additional commercial activity from coming onto their street. Kaven sheyesh kfar nichnasim v'yotzim, since there already is traffic. And the miller himself cannot stop another miller from setting up shop, because every professional can set up shop wherever he would like. And the first person cannot stop him, because the argument is each person is doing his own thing. I'm not stopping you from milling your grain, and I'll mill my grain in my spot. This is not similar to the case of the poor man prospecting on the garbage heap. Because that's where there's a specific merchandise that the poor person already has dibs on. He's already prospected or speculated on that particular pile of garbage. That's where we say that you're evil if you try to take it away from him. But when you're appealing for public patronage to the public market, then one person cannot stop another person. The only thing you can stop, as the Gemara says, would be someone from coming from out of town who does not pay the local taxes. Now, of course, in the modern world, where people do pay local taxes as business owners, this halacha would not apply. V'zeu das Rambam Zal, and this is the opinion of the Rambam. Shekasav beperek vav mishchenim, and he writes this in this chapter 6 of the laws of neighbors. Kofen b'nei mavui zeh ezeh shelo lahoshev b'neim lo chayit v'lo bursi v'lo echad mibali umnus, that the members of the same little neighborhood do have a right to prevent any new commercial business from opening up in their alleyway. But if there already is a commercial store that is open on their block, or if there was already a bathhouse or a store or a mill, and another guy opens up shop and he makes across the street another very same business, the first person cannot say to the second person, you are stopping my business. And even if the new competitor was from another neighborhood, but he's from the same city, they still can't stop him from opening up. But if he's coming from out of the city, then they can stop him. But if he's paying the local taxes to the king, then they cannot stop him. Okay, so that's the halacha. So once again, what we saw in the Ramah, who quoted one little snippet of the Gemara, the Ramah was really quoting a portion of the Gemara that we don't paskin like. And he was using it as part of an argument to prevent the new book publisher from publishing the Rambam's Mishnah Torah. But as you see, the halacha does not side with that part of the argument of the Ramah. And there are times when poskim will argue with each other as how we paskin. That's normal, of course. But in this particular instance, it would seem to me that perhaps the Ramah utilized that argument really as a way of bolstering what he knew needed to happen, which is to defend the Maharam Padawa's ability to make a parnasa. And so you see that there are sometimes extenuating circumstances in a particular situation where the Beis Din or the rabbi in question will invoke an opinion that we don't normally paskin like, but we'll use it as an argument to say, well, in this situation, we have to defend the first person. All right. So with that in mind,
Rabbi, can I just ask a question that may pertain to this? So I'm here. We had a situation a few years ago where, if you recall, the Sobeys Plaza, where they wanted to redevelop it. Now, here was a situation where you had all these stores, and they wanted to probably put a little residential there too. And I believe there was some Jewish ownership as part of that. But then you had this coalition of people, mixture of Jews and non-Jews, who were fighting very hard against having that happen. So in that sort of situation, were they not right? Didn't they have the right to develop it? And did the coalition have a right to really go after them because they were already there?
Well, what we have to do is we have to look at the local law of the land. And the fact of the matter is that this was their argument had nothing to do with competing businesses. Their argument had more to do with the creating too much density in the neighborhood and adding too much traffic and perhaps blocking views. And now there are halachos having to do with blocking view. There is something called hezek re'iyah in halacha. We learned a little bit about it previously, that if you put up a building that blocks all my sunlight, then halachically, I can sue you for that. You don't have a right to block my sunlight. I think that was part of the argument that they were obscuring the view. But the main argument they were making is that it was creating too much density in the neighborhood, which, by the way, would not have held up. You should know that the only reason why the development did not end up happening was because the developer is Ryokan, and they've got huge developments all over the GTA, and it just wasn't. It was too small of a development for them to make an issue over. They were distracted by other projects, but the neighbors would not have won in the long run had Ryokan chosen to pursue it. This is the advice that I've received from so many people, because there's so many developments going up. Look at what's happening in the promenade development. So anyway, the whole argument of density would not hold up, especially because the city needs new housing desperately. But beyond that, because of zoning laws that already exist, and because of so many environmental laws and density laws and noise laws and traffic laws that already existed in the book. Look, a municipality can create whatever laws it wants, and part of those laws is it gives the neighbors the right to submit their objection to a new project, and then it's up to the city council to make the decision whether they're going to grant the argument of the neighbors or whether they're going to grant the petition of the builder who would like to put up that project. And quite often, they will grant the petition of the builder more often than not if there is a perceived need for this kind of service or this kind of residential expansion in a particular municipality. So yeah, sure, everyone has a right to protest. Yeah, I mean, I may not like the fact that you're painting your house hunter green, right? And you live next door to me. I can protest, but that doesn't mean that I have a right to stop you, unless there's a law in the books that says that when you paint your house, you're limited to certain colors based on some kind of arbitrary decision that is made by the by the people who run the city. But that's different from over here. Here we're talking about competing businesses. That by allowing the second guy to open, the argument is you're going to be cutting off a lot of my income. And the overriding prevailing attitude in halacha is that in most situations we allow for open competition. Now, that doesn't mean that there's no such thing as unfair competition. There are going to be times when the open market policy does not apply if the new person opening up it will cause absolute ruination of all of its competitors, and then he'll force everyone else out of business. And then he'll only be the surviving person. We haven't seen that yet, but that's where I want to get to as well when we look at some more examples. So what we're going to go back into tomorrow, we'll look at some more responsa about intellectual property, which is also part of this issue about competing on intellectual property as well, not just on the purveying of goods. Okay. All right. So this is where we'll hold